All right. Hey, everybody. It's Dr. Angela Cudger. I'm the founder of Legacy Holistic Health Institute, where we train and certify health coaches, specifically focusing on health coaches that are part of minority populations, marginalized populations, as well as those individuals who are men. Today, we have with us Dr. Natasha Brewley. She is affectionately known as Chef Bee, and she is a plant-based chef out of Atlanta, Georgia. Now, for those of you who are here, let us know where you are and let us know what it is you currently do down in the comments. One of the things that I want us to be aware of is why this platform was created. This platform is created to give a voice to health coaches and those in integrative health to be able to help individuals who are part of minority populations, individuals who are part of marginalized populations, and those include the senior population, LGBTQIA plus, as well as men. These populations actually get pushed to the side a little bit when it comes to health coaching. And one of the things I want us to be aware of is some of the statistics. So it is very rare to have an African American health coach. Only 8.6% of health coaches in the world are African American or identify as African American. And we got to get those numbers up, y'all. And so I'm going to turn this over to Chef B because I want her to introduce herself and I want her to let us know why health coaching and why this journey.
All right. Greetings to everyone who has joined this conversation today. Thank you, Dr. Kudger, for having me. As I actually promoted this podcast, I said to the folks in the description, I was returning to where it all began for me. So thank you so much for creating Legacy Holistic Health Institute so that you could help to increase the numbers of
Mm.
African Americans, Black people serving their community in the work of health coaching and helping our families, friends, our community get better. So thank you so much for that. So y'all, I have a very different journey. I am a mathematician by training, almost 30 years, mathematics professor in higher education. I actually was a teacher at a high school, but most of the work that I've done was in higher education. And actually, my journey, who knew my journey in health coaching started with me? They always say, heal the coach, heal the client, right? That's sort of the old tried and true statement. When I was in graduate school, I actually started to develop hypertension because of all the stress of being in graduate school and doing all the work that we do in those spaces. And then got pregnant because I was married. And when I was having my baby, developed preeclampsia. And so, a slew of things happened as a result of that. And I really had to take back my health. But just imagine a new baby, I had a new job as a professor, all the stressors compounding together and really trying to figure out how to manage all of that. And so, actually, a friend told me about a health institute that she was really working with to address one of her health issues. She actually had cancer. And so she suggested that I go and check it out myself, which I did. And once I did, it just really was life changing for me. I was obsessed. I was like, this is what I want to do. So, I know that I am a teacher true to heart, but really, for me, at one point in my life, mathematics was sort of the piece that I thought was key for our people because it's a gatekeeper. And really now what I realize is that not having your health is a gatekeeper. And so really thinking about that work, moving from mathematics to the health and wellness space, has really become my ministry. I've even retired from the classroom so that I can fully do the work because they started competing with each other. So I'm absolutely happy to be who I am, Chef B, plant-based chef, educator, health coach, all the things, and really a community practitioner to just help to elevate how we see ourselves in the context of, health and wellness and healing. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, for those of you who are just now joining us, make sure that you drop in the comments where you are from and what it is you currently do. You can now see that individuals across different fields get into health coaching and they find that there is a completely different life. So, Chef B, so we're gonna dive into this thing about your favorite topic, food, right? Which is probably everybody's favorite topic, right? And so for those of you who aren't aware, and I'll share my background on another live stream. I won't go into detail here, but one of the things that turned me on to how food works and how our bodies assimilate food was when I was a bodybuilder. I didn't realize that what we eat can completely change what we look like, right? Don't believe me, go on like a vegetable or fruit fast for like 5 to 7 days. You'll notice a massive difference in your face, in your skin, and how you think, all the things. But with Chef B, I want to dive into food. All right.
Yeah,
Because food is a chef's mainstay and they know a lot about food. One of the things I want you to share with us, and I think this is important to health coaching, and I think it's equally, if not more, important for minorities is why fresh food. Now we know we hear it all the time. We try to buy fresh, try to eat fresh, we hear it all the time, but why should a person be incorporating fresh ingredients, plant-based foods, especially because we can go buy chicken breast and think it's fresh, and people have no idea that stuff has been on the shelf for ever before it hits their plate, right? I don't even want to get into that, but I want you to talk to us about why fresh foods. What do fresh foods do for the body?
absolutely. So first of all, let's talk about let's pull it back a little bit and talk about like lifestyle medicine. So many of the chronic issues that our people face, and when I say chronic issues, we're talking about hypertension, hyperlipidemia, prediabetes or diabetes, obesity, those sorts of things. Many of those things can be reversed through lifestyle change. And one of the core pieces at the center of lifestyle change is food. All right. So you have your primary foods and your secondary foods, right? And so when we think about our primary foods are really the things that we think about and just the things that are coming to us food wise, right? Emotions, all of that. But our secondary foods is really the foods that we're eating and putting in our bodies. Fresh foods are powerful, particularly if you are eating foods that are coming out of the ground and that the distance from when it was harvested to when you eat it is shorter than, let's say, getting it in the grocery store. Why? Because the nutritional value of those foods, if you're able to source your foods straight from when they were harvested, you're going to get a more nutritional impact than if the food was just sitting around at the grocery store. All right. In addition to that, when we think about, just your macronutrients, your micronutrients, you're talking about just like water in the food, just all of the different things that good fresh food gives us. It can help us to lose weight. It can help us to ward off some of those chronic diseases that we've talked about. And so it's really important that we start thinking about our foods differently. And, I know that many of the folks that I work with, they're used to eating processed foods. And some people don't even realize that some of the foods that they're eating is processed. But the more that you can connect to, just eating greens and vegetables and fruits in the purest form that they are in, and having as many servings, 5 servings or more a day of those things, you can begin to see the transformation in your body, in your skin, in your eyes, in your weight, in your energy. Just so many different benefits. There was a study done, you just hear about so many studies of folks putting people on a plant-based diet, specifically a plant-based diet for just 5 days, 10 days, and
Yes.
people just seeing a major change in just their palate. They're seeing a major change in just what their skin, their complexion looks like. They see a major change in their bowel movements just by
Mhm.
taking the time to just focus in on a plant-based diet with fresh foods. And so, being able to access fresh foods is critical. And so, some of the work that I'm doing now, and we can talk more about that shortly, is really helping people to get access to fresh food straight out the ground. Some of the work that I'm doing with one of my farmer friends, and we do that every week. And we also work in elementary schools to give young people access to fresh food. So it's really the healing. Like I talk about where the healing is. The healing is in you, in your hands, and the healing is in the food and the foods that you're choosing. And so if you out there going to McDonald's and Burger King, or because you're so lazy you don't want to go and make food for yourself, think again. Take an extra step to go to a farmer's market. Go to, in Atlanta, we're grateful we have the DeKalb Farmers Market, which is a very
Mhm.
huge building of international produce items from all over the globe. And I mean, it's literally like a tourist attraction. You can go there
Mhm.
and you can source just about anything, really. So fresh food is the way to go. And so we can't be complacent at this time, with the foods that we're accessing for ourselves and our families. You know, some people might argue that they're out here to get you, and you're gonna have to take ownership over your health and wellness by really just thinking differently about the foods that you're eating, and this culture now that we're in where folks are just wanting to buy prepared meals and outsource the meal prep. I mean, I have a meal prep business. Many people just don't want to cook anymore, and it's a big mistake. Even if you're doing it once or twice a week, that's where the healing is. You cannot outsource the healing to somebody else. You have to be
Mhm.
owner of your own healing, and eating fresh food regularly, consistently, will help to shift some of the health outcomes that we're seeing in our community.
I love that. I want to go back to the hands, and specifically putting your hands on your own food. Now, if
Yes.
you're in the comments and you're here watching live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you are, I want you to let me know what it is you identify as. Are you a person of color? Are you African American? Put that in the comments. What is it that you identify as when it comes to that? One of the things that I want to say is people of color have always, if you look back in history, understood the energetic transfer from their hands. It's why churches hands. It's why people fold their hands when they pray. It's why people rub their hands together in other populations to generate more energy before they touch or do something. It's why people speak over their food and use their hands when they do that. I want to talk a little bit about how combining your hands and touching your hands on your own food, how that transfers this energetic healing that people do, or they think about, or they've been taught, but they don't really understand. And then after that, we're going to dive into this whole access or lack thereof of great food and why that might be. So I just want you to speak a little bit to what you feel like happens when a person can put their hands back on their own food.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. I have a cookbook, probably see it in the back there, put it right there. Let Plants Nourish You. And after each recipe in the book, at the end it says, and a pill. And one of the, I know people are actually looking at this cookbook because they'll text me, DM me, hey, Chef B, what does PILL stand for? And I'm like, it stands for patience, intention, light, and love. And really, that's what it is. That's the energy that I believe you're putting in your food. And that's why no two recipes are alike. Because you, Angela, and I, Natasha Chef B, are very different. Even if we had the same exact ingredients, our energetic force when we come to cooking, preparing, whatever it is we're about to do is different. And so I think it's very critical that we tap back into that energy when we're doing the things that really serve us to heal our bodies, particularly in the kitchen. And one of the things that I did talk about was, you know, do the people who make your food love you? And when I say love you, like, I remember going one time to, I'm not going to name names, one of these places out here, and they were just throwing the food inside the container. I was like, I don't even want it. They don't love me. They're not thinking about me. They're not thinking about my day. They're not thinking about how that food is serving my body. When I work with my clients, I'm doing that work. I'm taking my time. I am not rushing. I am putting all of my good intentions, all of my love, all the things that I know that person is dealing with individually as a client, whether it's obesity or they're trying to work on bringing their cholesterol down. I'm thinking about all of those things in the ingredients that I select to make the food for them. All right. And I'm praying for them in my hands. I'm talking to them as I put those meals together and put that thing that I'm preparing for them together. And I encourage people to think like that. It is a very spiritual to make food. It's a very spiritual act to prepare food for folks. And that's why I say, when grandma or nana or whatever you call her auntie, you're like, man, auntie, give me that recipe for that pound cake. Give me that recipe for that whatever. And you go home and you make it, it don't taste the same. It just don't. And that's because you're not auntie and she's not you. The difference is her patience, intention, light, and love that she puts in the food is going to look different than yours. All right. And so we all have our own individual energetic force that we bring to everything that we do. And so you are the expert in your own body. You know when you're feeling off, what you should be doing that's different. The question is, are you going to make that change? Are you going to shift your behavior? Are you going to shift the things in your diet that you need to shift in order to see a different outcome in how your body is responding? Someone else out there that's cooking for you, they don't know that. Only you know that. So that's why you're the expert in your healing, because you know the details of what's going on in your body. The question always begets, are you willing to make the changes to improve your health outcomes? And that's one of the challenges that we have in our community. Some of our folks are not willing to make those changes. So
I love it. I love it. And I like how she said that's what grandma said, don't eat everybody's food. And it's, and some people, and I'm gonna say this because there you'll find that this is true across different industries, across different professions. I always say I feel like people who land in the healthcare space were actually healers, or actually people who want to be healers of some kind, but something else made them want to choose healthcare instead. I'm going to say this about food and people who are chefs and people who especially do meal prep like Chef B does. They have the ability to transfer the love into their food, right? So they can. So it's why every time you showed up at your grandma's house, the cake didn't disappoint. It's why you like, okay, who made the greens this time? Oh, who made Wait, so who made that? Okay, I'm not going. It's something you think of that says, okay, I'm gonna
absolutely.
partake of this, but I'm gonna forego putting that in my body. It's the same thing. It is also why, if you think back, and this is every household, but I grew up in a household of color, like many of you probably did. But if you grew up in a specific household, they didn't let kids run through the kitchen. They didn't let you, in some cases, depending on what they were cooking, you couldn't even talk loud in the kitchen, right? So food, how we consume it, what we do with it, how we source it, how we eat it, and how we take it in is so sacred. And I always tell people, you can tell when someone eats like they love themselves. That again, you can tell when a person eats like they love themselves. You can tell in their energy. You can tell in how they carry themselves. You can tell in how they act. And it doesn't matter if they sit down and they're having a meal with people they know or a meal with people they don't know. You can tell when a person eats or consumes food in a way that makes them feel like they actually love themselves. It's important what you eat. And it's equally important to know that if you are a health coach and if you're an aspiring health coach, because some things you can give to people and it could actually hurt them. You could mean to do well and not have the right knowledge and still end up doing harm. And we don't want to do that. So Chef Beee, I remember you saying some of you might think that they're out to get you. Now, I'm gonna say this. I currently live in Mexico. So I can go downstairs, get fresh sour sop. I can get fresh dragon fruit. We are lock, stock, and barrel on fresh stuff here, right? And none of it, seems to be giving me any issues. Whereas I could eat the same things in another country and they may or may not have the same effect. Can we speak a little bit about how people get access to good food? Because I think this is something that everyone is faced with when they say, okay, let me try plant-based. Okay, let me try to eliminate some of the animal products for a while and see if I feel better, right? So I want you to talk a little bit about how a person would go about going into a plant-based diet and where would.
Uh-oh, you broke up there for a second. What was that last question? How would someone go into a plant-based diet?
And how would they get the food?
Got it. Okay. So I think there are levels, right? I think, the whole piece here that we're focused on today is behavior change. And I think that in the true nature of a health coach, one of the things that we really focus on is helping people to take baby steps. And so for someone who's working to transition to a healthier diet, what I would first tell people to do is let's start doing a survey of where you can get absolutely the best quality food, right? So once again, I live in Atlanta, so we have something called the DeKalb Farmers Market. That would be a great place for you to get access of fresh, great food. In addition to that, because we're in the South, there's a lot of urban farms right here in Atlanta. And so, for those of you who aren't familiar, there is, and I'll pull it up and put it in the chat. There are ways for you to locate local farms, urban farms across the country, not just in Georgia, but in your respective states, so that you can form relationships with your local grower. Because that's really where we have to get back, right? We have to really start thinking about how can we connect to our urban farms? How can we be a member of a CSA if they exist? And it is a community supported agriculture. It's like a CSA, that's what we call it. It's a way for you to get healthy produce every week based on what is local, what is grown in season. All right.
Mhm.
And so, what I would say is if someone is trying to shift, they're really trying to make this shift, let's first identify the things that are easy for you to access. That is going to be like a farmer's market. All right. And can you make the commitment to, instead of going to a Kroger or a Publix or whatever the
Walmart.
major grocery stores are, Walmart, let's start going there once a week so that you can start exploring new ingredients. Because one of the things we know about behavior change is it needs to be accessible, it needs to be easy for people to do if it's going to be long lasting, enduring. All right. And then once you start getting the rhythm for that, once again, you can start doing farmers markets. I am currently at two farmers markets. And when I say farmers markets, we're talking about open air farmers markets on the weekend. Various cities do it. You have from like maybe 9 to 1, 10 to 2, an opportunity for people to access fresh food, local growers who might be a little further away. So they come to a location every weekend so that they can sell their goods, their produce items. And so now we need to access those. And honestly, y'all, when you start doing these things, it feels good. There's this feeling in your
Mhm.
body when you are in spaces that are giving, healthy, high vibrational food. I don't know. I just feel different when I'm in those spaces. And you're talking to the growers, you're talking to those people, you're asking them questions. They're telling you about the produce, they're telling you about the nutrients in them, they're telling you why they grow. Like you're now creating a relationship with your grower, your farmer. And so these are baby steps. I'm not saying these things happen right away, but this is what's available to each and every one of us, whether it's in this amount or this amount, depending on where you live. And so it's definitely an intentional act to want to get fresh food and to want to eat better. And so I think, when you're talking about doing these things, it's really about getting excited about the discovery that all of this plant-based eating can offer you. I'm still learning about fruits and vegetables, different species, different varieties of
Mhm.
carrots and greens and tomatoes that look a little different, that have a different flavor profile. As a chef and health coach, someone who teaches people about this, it's so exciting to me. And once I start sharing those things with others, they get excited about it. So I know a lot of this is just knowledge. A lot of people are just not aware that this is available to them. But once they get into it, they just get so excited. So, that's where I would begin. Is there a farmer's market in your city? And if there's a farmer's market in your city, what is the quality of the produce items there? Is that a trade-off that you can start making? Instead of going to your regular grocery store, can you go there to get some, if not all, of the produce items that you need for your week?
Yeah.
So baby steps. It's baby steps.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I've personally found that when you create those relationships, you're right, that does feel different. That feels good to get to know the person who's putting their hands on your food, who's growing your food. But it also feels good to support local, right? To know that the money that you're giving in exchange for the food that you'll eat from this farmer is going straight to their household. Like you're supporting someone else's household directly. And that's empowering as well. And some farms I know will let you come and pick things, will let you come and assist with things. And so you get to see a little bit of the growing process and how things work. Now, I want to talk now that we talk a little bit about that. Where do we get it? Say I want to eat fresh for a while. I know how to get it now. I know how to take those baby steps. Now I want to kind of shift gears because I saw something posted one day and it kind of pissed me off, right? But to it made me really think about how people feel about the way minorities eat. So we're going to talk a little bit about behavioral change, but before we do, before I want us to continue the conversation about access. So if you're here with us and you're in the comments, let me know what you think a food desert is. In the comments, let me know what you think a food desert is. What is a food desert? Right? What do you think a food desert is? And so we're going to talk a little bit about this today because the post that I saw, the gist of the post was through some research that was done. And the post basically stated in a nutshell, and I'm paraphrasing here, that we have food deserts and we have people who don't eat well because they don't want to. There are places where they try to bring in fresh foods, but these same minority populations, these same marginalized, even the elderly, senior populations don't want good food, is essentially what this research stated. They don't have access to it because they don't want it. And so essentially, the research concluded minorities and marginalized communities may remain ill and have disease processes because they don't want to eat better. They don't want good food, right? So when these people come into their communities and try to give them access to better things, they don't support it, they don't buy it, so they don't want good food. Now, Chef Beee.
The lies, the lies, the
Right.
lies.
So I've held an entire, and some of you guys might be on here. Leslie's on here. She was part of this. We held the National Wellness Conference for Navajo Nation in Indian country. And we can tell you those people want good food, but they live in a food desert. And so when I saw this research, right? It was not done by a person of color. I will say that. It was not done by a minority at all. And so it raises some red flags concerning how people are informed when they interact. And this was a health board certified health coach. And so it kind of raised a red flag on, and you had a lot of health coaches jumping in there saying, yeah, I agree. This is good information. And so it makes me wonder, well, how are you talking to your Black client? Yeah. If you get a minority client that lives in a food desert, are you assuming that it's just because they never supported it? So how are you informed about the care of somebody who does not look like you, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about this food desert thing, right? Because this will live on the internet forever. And I want I want to put the information out there that it's not okay to not be a part of these populations and then try to put out information as a whole about these populations. When you've never lived in those places, when you didn't grow up in those places, you can, even if you see the research, it should still raise the red flag if you're someone in healthcare or in health and wellness versus, oh, let me just share this because it makes sense for the people that I know and it makes sense for the people that I live around, right? So I want to hear from you what you feel like a food desert is. We got a ton of definitions in the comments that I'm going to show in a moment, but I want you to tell us what you think a food desert is. And from your experience, I mean, you've helped over 700 people at this point with food related things, access. And so probably more than the person who posted it. Okay. And so I want you to talk a little bit about what qualifies or what you think in your experience a food desert is and how living in a food desert affects the decisions that minorities make about what they eat.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just by definition, a food desert is when you have lack of healthy, affordable food within a certain proximity of your community. So if it's not drivable, like if you can't within, and I don't know the mileage radius, but from your home to however many miles you are unable to access fresh, healthy food, then you live in a food desert. Now I'll say this, I live in Atlanta and, we have grocery stores and we have all the things. Unfortunately, when I look at the quality of those grocery stores, the same exact grocery store I live in Southwest Atlanta. So the same name, Kroger, Whole Foods, well, not Whole Foods. We don't have a Whole Foods over there. Kroger or Walmart. The quality of the food in those spaces looks drastically different than the quality of food in, let's say, a Walmart, Kroger, Publix in Marietta or in, West Side District where it's more affluent people living there. So there is again, there's that care, this care that is put into the quality of the food in specific spaces, certain neighborhoods than others. But the thing that's problematic with that statement is we got to understand that and this is across the board. This isn't just, our community, minority communities. When, like, even the work that I do weekly at the farm, because I work with a farmer, we have a farm stand every Friday. I make, value added food for those folks. The thing that we have an issue with is that the food is there, right? So we're growing food at her farm, but people don't necessarily know what a Hakurei turnip is. People don't necessarily know what to do with Swiss chard. We think as, plant-based people, oh, it's just Swiss chard. But if someone in the community is not used to using those fresh ingredients, they need education. They need education. So it's not that people don't want the food, it's just that they're not educated on different ways that they can use those foods in their day to day. And so that's been a critical part of what we do at these farm stands and even at the farmers market. I actually do chef demos at the farmers market that I'm at on Saturdays once a month, so that we're showing people, okay, you're here at this market, there's all of these beautiful artisans. This is how you can use these things because they just don't know. This is how you use Hakurei turnip. This is how you can repurpose carrots. So we're pulling the whole carrot out the ground. And what often people do is waste a lot of the food because we're so used to and conditioned to just seeing certain things in the market. Oh, it's just the orange part. Well, what about that beautiful green part? You can use that too. So where it's all about the education and then giving people resources. Here's the recipe. If you like this, go home, get the ingredients, and recreate it at home for your family. People are more inclined to do those things if they're educated. All right. And so it's not that people don't want the food in the food deserts, it's providing education on how to use foods that they can access and providing resources so that they can then go home once they learn and they're excited about the things that they're learning and do it themselves. And so what happens is we stop in a lot of ways. We stop. We're like, oh, we're going to provide this. And then you drop the ball. But there's so many other components to the change that our communities need to have than just making it available. It has to be ongoing education. And the other piece is because we know that change takes a while. Behavior change takes a long time because of access and making things, available for people. It's an ongoing support that people need and checking in order to see how that change is going. They say that most behavioral change techniques and programs that they have out there, you're talking about long enduring change, it doesn't really work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because, it's not measured properly. People fall off. There's just so many different reasons why things shift for folks. If you're stressed, if you have a lot going on, it's very easy to get off track. So, we have to be more diligent in how we help our communities access fresh foods, access the things that they need. And it needs to be resources and education in addition to making it available. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, I agree. And so it looks like they agree here in the comments as well. And so this is definitely for people who are aspiring health coaches, right? So one of the things you are undoubtedly going to run into as a practicing health coach or an aspiring one is people, communities who live in food deserts. And I'm gonna have someone, actually Leslie Atley is going to go in depth when she comes on here. She's going to talk a little bit more about how do you connect with your communities and how do you make sure that they have access to these resources, like they need to know the chef bees are out there, like they need to know this education is there for them. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in a couple of weeks. Now, Chef, about the food deserts, I want to kind of shift gears talked about access. Now let's talk about behaviors, because you started to touch on that. And I know that when it comes to behaviors of minorities, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the commonalities among behaviors that you see when you're coaching minorities, or when you're educating people on how to use these ingredients, when you're educating them about, how to make sure that they have access to what they need to stay healthy. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are some common behaviors you see in the community besides, I don't know what to do with those ingredients, or I didn't know that I could use both ends of this carrot? What other behaviors would you say are you seen as kind of an overarching collective of people of color?
So I feel like, in order for people to want to change, like there needs to be something that's really pushing the lever for them to change. And I feel like that's across the board with, what I do as a chef, what I do in health coaching, just all of it. Like that big why that we really encourage people to access and talk about. Once we get that, and they're clear about that, that's really like there's like this aha moment that happens for people. And so, I actually asked some of my clients, like, what are some of their challenges in making changes, and in preparation for this conversation with you today. And one person said, she really just didn't want to get on medication. So her doctor was
Mm.
pushing medication on her, right? And so she was so terrified of having to be on medication. That was the catalyst for her making change. It was just, she was like, and not only that, another person talked about convenience. So because of their lives, you know, things need to be easy for them. And so I would say that's a commonality. People, we're in a different space and time where things don't have to
Mhm.
be hard because people are busy and all of that. And
Mhm.
so, in regards to making change, it needs to be kind of a fluid, effortless change. One person basically talked about the convenience of accessing healthy plant based meals. And it's not really a societal thing, right? Most of what we see out there are designed for people to consume meat and foods that are cheap. So like the McDonald's and those kinds of things. So I do find in him saying that, I do find that when people have to make an investment in their life, right? Whether it's for food or for whatever, health coaching, and they have to spend a little money. Sometimes like if it's driven by some kind of diagnosis, they're more likely to really make that change and really go for it. So like I said, she was afraid to you know be on medication, so
Mhm.
that was a lever that pushed her to really kind
Mhm.
of lock in and make the change, right? And for others, it's like, there might be some kind of life event that happens. They have a baby, they get married, they're really just
Uh-oh.
full
I think
advantage. Can you hear me?
yep, you're good now.
They want to take full advantage of this new life that they're embarking on. So I do think that when we're talking about change, people really need to embody something very deep and intrinsic within themselves in order for it to stick. If they cannot access that piece, it's not going to stick long term.
Yeah.
There is a higher calling that needs to happen for you to really make long lasting change, an identity shift on some levels, in order for you to move from point A to point B and for it to really make
Mhm.
sense and be enduring. And until that actually happens, you're just spinning your wheels, really. You might lose the weight for a time, but then after a while, you just kind of, okay, I did that. I'm good. Let me go back, and you sneak and you eat a few things that you know you shouldn't be having. It's when you decide that you want to be a completely different person
Yeah.
And it takes time for people to really get there. Do we
Yeah.
see a change, and that's not just minorities, that's anybody, but particularly with minorities. If you are looking at your family structure, you're looking at the health outcomes in your family, you're seeing diabetes in your family, you're
Mhm.
seeing, hyperlipidemia, which is high cholesterol, you're seeing obesity, you're seeing all the things in your family, and you're making decisions like, wow, I don't want to be like that. I want to create something different for myself and my offspring, my next generation. That's when I think the changes really start to happen, for sure. Until then, we're just spinning our wheels.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And so Headquarters says it was a life-changing event for her. Yeah, it happens, right? Or like you said, your client said, I don't want to take these medications, right? One of the things, and this is specifically, I always tell people, look at how other people live, right? Don't just blindly feel like the way you live your life, especially in the United States. Man, we got some egos in the States. Um, how you live your life in the States, I want you to be bold enough to look across at how other people in other countries live. And I say that is because, like, I know people personally that wait to go abroad to see a doctor. And their number one reasoning for doing this for most of them is because they know that they won't be offered medication first. They will be offered something, a much more holistic or natural approach. And then if that doesn't work, then we will look at medication. But they give you the space and the grace to try to let the body heal itself. And that is, I mean, in the US, we lead the world in pharmaceutical use. We lead the world in pharmaceutical use in the United States. And that's something to be aware of. And it's no wonder when a person knows that they've got to go on a medication, that it triggers something in them to want to shift, to want to change and say, wait a minute. Now, one of the things that I like that you brought up was about investing, or they've got to pay a little bit of money, right? I almost, and you probably hear this too when people say, well, it's expensive to eat healthy. And I always am thinking it's expensive to buy medication too. I don't know if you've
It
ever had to
is.
buy medicine, but
It
it's
is.
expensive to buy medicine as well, especially if you're looking at in terms of like diabetes, right? You're looking at the fact that insulin was invented to be free. They put a price on it and made sure that people had diabetes so they could buy it, right? And so you have to look at all of the different pieces as it relates to health and disease and the options, because the option to eat better, live better, or work with a health coach has almost always been there, right? At least since the 1990s, it's always been there. And so it's about getting ourselves and understanding what options we have. Now, let's talk a little bit about um, providing value to people as a health coach and as a chef, right? What would you say are some of the types of value that you provide to people since graduating and being able to assist as a health coach? Now, you went through two programs. Don't put that out there. You went through a couple of them. We ain't gonna name. We should name names, right? Because there was another IIN coach in here too.
No,
But
before you ask your question, I wanna just kind of circle back to the beginning. So this is, for me, legacy was the beginning. What I did before legacy, I was a student and graduated from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I didn't see me at all in the curriculum, at all. Because I remember graduating. I was like, "Where are the black people at? Where are the black people? It's only
tag, you're it. You're it,
women. Health
boo.
coaches is only white. Where the black people?" I just kept saying that when all the lessons came. Where the black people? Where the black people? And so when Dr. Kutcher came up with her program, I was like, "I'm in. Let's go." Let's go. And still, even now, I do continue in education things with IIN. I'm like, where the black people? Still in 2024, we are not fully represent that. It's not for us. They're not creating health coaching
Yeah.
programs. I'm talking about IIN specifically for us. They're just not. You know, we're hardly represented. Maybe one or two sprinklings, right? But we're not. And so, going back to what you talked about value. You know, here's what I want to say. You know, like you can decide as a health coach how you want to go about this thing. So currently, and behind me, where I'm at the Healing Me First Wellness Center. So I basically just, decided to create a wellness space of my own so that I can serve the people that I serve in a space that feels comfortable and wonderful. They can come here and they can get what it is that they need. And so I really just had a moment when I'm here, I get just moments of clarity like, who are you serving? What are your goals? What are you trying to do, Chef B? And for me, it's about empowering people to take back their health. It's about empowering people to eat better. Like, again, acknowledging that the healing is in your own hands and for you to be in the space where you don't want someone else to do it for you. You want to do it for yourself. And so one of the things I would say from a value standpoint is I really work to educate people. We have a YouTube channel. We'll share that link with you guys. You guys can sign up for that, where we're showing people how easy and effortless it can be to live a plant-based lifestyle. It's not as far away removed as you think it might be. So part of the value for me is education, free education, not worrying about the money, but really locking into who do you want to serve, and how do you want people to be? How do you want to leave them better off than when they first came to you? And for me, is if someone is empowered to drink more water or to drink a smoothie or drink fresh juice or try a recipe, to me, I've provided value to them. If they're inspired to just do something a little bit different than what they were doing and they're excited about it, then I provided some value to them. And that's just on the surface level. Many of the folks that, I've worked with a lot of it cleanses, meal prep, all the things, they come back and they're like, I never thought that eating plant-based would be so good. There's all of these misconceptions about what it means to eat plant-based. It's going to taste bland. It's going to be boring. It's not exciting. And really, most of the world is eating plant-based, y'all. Like, they just are. Americans are the ones that eat the most meat. They just
They sure
are.
do.
People can't afford meat in other countries like that. Most
Mm-hmm.
people are eating plant-based. And so, let's be clear. Like, this thing is not far away from you. It's just you've been conditioned to think that it is.
Yeah.
And so just really helping people to expand and open up their mind about what's possible for them. And, I'm all about moderation. That's the work of a health coach. I don't expect anybody to make a sweeping change because
Mhm.
it's not long lasting and enduring. It's trying new things, really thinking about if that works for you, and then crowding in more new things that are good for you, and then crowding out the things that don't serve you. That's really the work of a health coach, and really being the guide and the facilitator to support people along the way. And so I feel like, no judgment is also a value that I have provided my clients. I meet them where they are. I don't judge anyone. I'm like, this plant-based thing that you're doing, if you want to still eat some fish, chicken, whatever, we've done the hard work for you of thinking out the
Mhm.
major part of your menu and your meal for the week. If you want to add an animal-based protein because you feel like you need that, you fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay. And once people realize that you're not judging them and that you're giving them the act, like the permission to just be, they're like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be. I think people get caught up in names too. I don't use the word vegan at all. And there's some
Mhm.
cultural, spiritual reasons I don't use the word vegan. I don't think Black people can be vegan. That's a whole nother conversation. We cannot be vegan. Black people can't be vegan. We can have a whole conversation about that, Dr. Kudja. Black people cannot be vegan. You could be plant-based, you could be plant-forward, plant-positive, all of those things. Those to me are more inviting words. We are not vegan. We're not vegan. Okay? So another
Now
conversation.
I gotta ask why, right? But I mean, I know why. I know why I eat mostly plants, right? I have these stints where 40 days all raw, or this amount of days I might add in legumes, or I might add some other things. So I am one of those people that shifts the way that I eat based on how I'm feeling and the phase or whatever that I'm in. So I never like to tie myself to one diet. Now, there are some staples that are just out of the question. So, like pork based, beef based, there are some things that are just out of the question. I'm not eating it. It's just not happening. If I did, it was either by mistake or I just wanted to try a little tiny piece of it. But it's never, you ain't gonna never see me sit down to a T-bone. It just ain't happening. Like I get grossed out by happening, right? So, and everybody's different. Everybody's way of eating is different, right? But one of the things, because this is the last question, right? And real quick before I ask this last question, there are partial scholarships still available. So for those of you, and this is just so I don't forget, you guys, there is a full scholarship drawing. So if you've attended this live stream and you registered, now if you're watching from somewhere and you didn't register, your name didn't go in to be pulled, right? There are over 150 people at this point whose names are in for a full scholarship drawing for cohort 44. Now, there are partial scholarships available. There are 3 more of those available. For those of you who want the information on that, you can send a text enroll to the number that's going across the screen. Our last question has to do with DNA, right? And this might have been, you might have been kind of touching on this when you said Black people can't be vegan. Now, we got to know why. You can't just throw that out there and say, don't call yourself and I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume it's not because they carry Louis Vuitton and Coach and all that, because that stuff is some of it's
That,
pleather, but a lot of it's
that's
leather, depending on
pleasure.
what it is, right? So you're still carrying some other kind of animal product. I never I never understood the logic in having a dog as a pet and eating a steak. Never understood that logic. But people they do it all day. They do it all day and 3, 4 times on Sunday. So I'm not gonna get into that part of it, but I do want to talk about why you think Black people can't be vegan, and do you think that there are specific things like ways of eating, styles of eating, right, that are tied to our DNA and our culture, and what we need for ourselves. We know that the body is going to crave certain things. Like if a person is iron deficient, they crave certain things. If they're lacking in love, even they crave certain things. If they are stressed or prone to stressful environments, they crave certain things, salt, crunchy things, right? They crave things that they need to bear down on. And so just to get like grounded or feel a certain way, right? Like they're in control. Now, the body's going to always be giving us this kind of information. So I want to quickly out minority DNA if we can, if you're willing to. What, and this is just how we feel, y'all. But
Yeah.
minority DNA and why you feel like Black folk can't be vegan. That was a new one for me.
Okay,
So
so let me touch on that. Let me touch on that real fast. So there is, like, if you look historically at people of color, in terms of spiritual practice, all right, ancient African spiritual practice, Ifa, Eve, Voodoo, you name it, there is some kind of animal sacrifice inside of that process. Okay. Not to mention You know, if you think about people who are practitioners of African drumming, of African dance, you know, all the things, go to Africa and just study people. You know, when you talk about animals, it's very much like plants. They're very much a part of the ethos of how people live. And, you know, they're not always just eating animals, but they're also wearing animals. And so if we talk about being vegan, veganism, which was a construct created by white folks, you know, is all about just sort of having this symbiotic relationship with animals, and they have their rights, and you know, we can't be consuming bee honey, and you can't do that. We're something else, all right? We're not vegan. So there was a specific political reason for creating the construct of the word vegan. And that's not something that we created. We've just adopted that word because that, you know, it just describes a lifestyle, a eating lifestyle, but we don't necessarily capture the whole aspect of it, because many of us still wear leather shoes. Many of us still use leather bags. Many of us are still using makeup that are not vegan based. In addition to our lifestyle, our full lifestyle, our spiritual practices, where there is some form of animal sacrifice in it. So you cannot say that you're vegan and you are doing that. It's not, it doesn't make sense. Call it something else. It's not veganism. It's just not. So that's why I say that, because who we are as people of color, animals, plants, the way we do things, our whole cultural ethos, we bring all of those things into the flow. We just do. It's just part of how we do things. We've gotten away from that living in America, but if you leave America and you go to other countries, they're doing these kinds of things. So that's number one. Number two, you talked about in the DNA. Well, tell me again, like the behavior change and the. Tell me the
Yep.
question.
Right, right. So first of all, I love that explanation. And it's not just people from Africa. Like South Americans are the same way.
Yes, I'm
South
from South
of
America.
America. Yep.
Yes,
Most, even the bottom of North America is the same way, right? So,
yes.
so that's
People of
something to keep
color.
in
Look, I said black people, but people of color, y'all. All right, I'm from South America. I'm from Guyana. People of color. Get rid
yeah.
of this word vegan, please. My husband would kill me because we argue about this. Say plant-based. I put in the comments earlier, plant-based or plant. We talk about pronouns. Those are my preferred pronouns, okay? Those are my preferred pronouns. Plant-based or plant-forward are my preferred pronouns, okay? Now, but not
Straight
vegan.
face.
Not only that, veganism, just that word and just the way it limits how we, in terms of this idea of behavior change. I found in talking to my clients, they're like, "Are you a vegan chef?" They just crunch up. I said, "No, I'm plant based." Mind you, I'm not using honey. I'm not using all those things. The food is vegan, quote unquote. But I don't use that because for some reason it blocks people in their mind about what's available to them. I just say I'm plant based, plant forward. That's the kind of food I make. And immediately people open up. They're like, "Oh my God, okay, I could do this." So as health coaches, going back to this, you know, I've chosen to work with people around food and helping them to, you know, just elevate how they look at food and be with food, right? You have to really meet people where they are. And in understanding behavior change, language is important. It's absolutely important. And so I've been very strategic and clear not to use certain things because I know that that's a block for folks. And I don't want people starting the game blocked. I want them to feel like, wow, this is accessible for me. This is available for me. And I could do this. And using some words over others are just kind of throws people off.
It does.
Um, So go back and ask your last question, because
All right,
I
about this DNA, right? And if you guys have questions for Chef B around food, food deserts, food knowledge, now's the time to put those questions in the comments. Y'all, I should have said that. Cabana, I saw your comment about the texting. Just text again and make sure you're texting the right number, okay? All right. So I wanted to ask, when it comes to food and our DNA, right? And you touched on this already a little bit with the culture and the customs and how we eat, right? Um, when it comes to that, when it comes to DNA and our culture, are there specific things that influence our behavior, right? So, like for example, like how I was saying, how when the body craves iron, a lot of times women gnaw on ice, right? One has nothing to do with the other, but they gnaw on ice for whatever reason when their iron is low. When a person feels like they want to be loved or they're lacking the emotion of love, whether it's with a significant other, a friend group, or a group of people or whatever, they tend to eat chocolates. They tend to eat artificial sweets. They tend to turn to things that are sweet or sweetened, right? Rarely do they turn to fruit, right? Which could totally help with that. But I want to talk a little bit about what are some things you've seen that you say, okay, this has a lot to do with the DNA of people of color. And I'm glad we opened it up to like all POCs, because even Asian people have animal sacrifices and things like that, but their diets are predominantly plant based, whole grains, like legumes. That's the majority of an Asian diet, right? If we really look at it, right? How that our DNA and makes us also foods that we want to eat, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
hmm. So I feel
How do
like
you think?
in regards to that, I think that it space and place also plays a component in that. So, for example, I'm Guyanese, right? But I live in America now versus being Guyanese and living in Guyana. So deep within my DNA, at the cellular level, I might have cravings and things of that nature, but the things that I draw upon is always going to be what's available to me in this moment, in this space, in this context, versus the same thing could be happening to a member of my family in Guyana, and what's available to them, they're going to pull upon those things. And so that's why I feel like from a behavior change standpoint, there's socioeconomic status that definitely plays a role in all of this.
Yep.
There's also going to be cultural norms. What do your people do when they need to do this, that, or the other? And then the space and place that you're in, that's also going to influence what you reach for and how you do things. And I'm going to add a fourth one: community. We haven't talked about community at all today, Angela,
Mhm.
explicitly. But if I'm amongst people like myself who are doing the same things that are destructive to their health, and those are my people, more than likely I'm going to adopt those behaviors as well. But
Yeah.
if I'm in a community and those people identify themselves as being healthy and well and thriving and elevated, and even though we're from the same place, we're really actively in a community working to elevate ourselves, then I'm going to really adopt that identity and do what we do in that community. So behavior change, all these things that we've talked about today, it's critical that we bring in community. Community
Absolutely.
is probably one of the missing ingredients in many of these research studies
Yeah.
around behavior change and what happens with health coaching, because it's like the cherry on top, that's so important to really help to see that long lasting enduring shift. Because
That's
once
right.
people are in community, things start to happen when people are in community. This was my dissertation research. Communities of practice. Your identity starts to shift to
Mhm.
whatever that dominant community's identity is. And so talk about things at the DNA level, at the cellular level, and all of that. But I do think that there's environmental norms, cultural norms, community norms that really shape how people look, like longevity. If you now look at blue zones and all of these things that people are talking about, one of the major
Mhm.
components of that is community. Those people are together and they look out for each other and they're helping to elevate each other, period. They are there for each other. And when you talk about food deserts, when you talk about all of these other things, those things haven't necessarily been established. So we talked about education, community, Angela. Community is key, is one of the big pieces that's missing out of all of these things. Once we really start honing in on community and how we can actively really help to shape a powerful community that is looking after each other, we can study,
That's right.
we can really think about how we can see some meaningful changes in the, the health outcomes of, people of color.
Mm.
Until we do that,
Yeah.
we're gonna still see the same
Yeah.
results.
Yeah. And it and I love that you brought this up. You know, I'm gonna have another question about community here in a minute. But because it's so important, because I think people think that community is one thing, when in reality community is a space of shared resources, a space of shared knowledge. And it's not just where you go to lean on, it's also where you go to lend into. It's also where you go to give to. And that's what makes a community super strong, right? And it's also knowing what you have access to, right? Knowing that somewhere near you, there is a health coach, right? This is why we did the health coach pilot across Indian country, because they wanted access to a health coach in their communities. They were clear on the resources in their community and that they weren't enough. They needed more knowledge, and not more medical knowledge. They needed someone else to come in. And so they decided to train people in the community so that they have that resource there, right? So you're right. It's important. They know that until we have someone here with this knowledge to help all of us, we don't have what we need. We're still missing something. And so community is so key. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
And so I don't know how I want to ask this, right? We're over time, you guys. Okay. I still want to ask it though, right?
Go ahead.
Didn't begin to identify, right? And if you're on here and you say, in my vicinity, I don't have a health coach, you probably should be the one to be it. Knowing that we only got 8.6%, honey, you're up. Tag, you're it, right? You should probably be the one to apply. I'm just
That
being honest,
is true.
because especially if you're someone that people are already asking you for advice, right? Some people carry that energy to where people are open to coming up to them and asking them, help me with this, show me this. And you might say, well,
Yeah.
what makes you think I know that? What makes you think I'm supposed to know that?
Hmm.
Right? And so if you're already influencing people in that way energetically, you probably should be the one to seek out that knowledge. Just putting that out there. But I want to talk real quick. And if you guys have questions, drop them in the comments super fast, because I know you got to go too. I want to talk a little bit about what attributes come along with a community that is health forward, right?
Yeah.
That is, you know, this community, those they care about rooting disease out. Because some of them are about bringing it in, let's be clear. But
True.
right, I always used to say, and people thought this was weird, women bring death into their house. I used to always say that if you're the person shopping and people are not getting healthier, sis, you are bringing death into your house. But you have the ability to bring into your house, right? And I had that conversation with a male, and that male was like, "You're absolutely right." He said, "You're right." He said, "But if she knows that he's the provider and I'm going out every day and I'm working, why would you bring me death? Why would you not want to take care of me so that I'm around for my family? Why would you not go the extra mile to know? Because I'm not going to always know it. You're doing all the shopping and buying all the food. Why would you not go out of your way to make sure that I'm taken care of? A good conversation. I was like, I don't know. I'm not your woman, but I'm just saying it's worth talking about when you get home. Okay. So talk a little bit about this community question before we get off. This community question. What are some attributes that when people say, okay, I'm looking at moving over there, what should they be looking for in terms of a solid community that they know is going to be there?
All right, so I would say if I'm looking to elevate my health and wellness, and even for those of you like you're in Mexico right now, I know one of the things that people are concerned about when they leave the US and they go somewhere else, will I be able to find like-minded people? You can find like-minded people. And now it doesn't have to necessarily even be like-minded people right there in the space. They can be virtual and you can connect with them. So I think it's important to have people that you can tap into on a regular basis that's going to hold you accountable, that's checking on for you, that's looking out for you. Hey, if you set goals, small little goals, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to drink my water, make sure that I'm, staying away from wheat, bread, whatever. Are those people really holding you to what you're saying? So accountability is a huge component. What's the ethos of the community? Is the community about health and wellness, or is the community about partying? I'm part of many communities, as I'm sure you are, Angela. My gym community, it's about getting in there and getting that work done. And so it's taken time to really understand that culture. But we play later, we work first. And so I make it my business to be at the gym 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays at the very least. It's hard sometimes. And when I oversleep, something happens, I feel so bad. And it's okay, but I feel bad about it because we work really hard first and then we play later. It's about making sure that we are getting what we need in our bodies, and people just holding you accountable to that. I think those are some of the key pieces. Love is also a part of the community. How do the people in that community feel about each other? Do they really have your best interest at heart? Do you have their best interest at heart? And I think that if you lead with these things, this is where the longevity piece comes in. As we get older, some of our, mates are, no longer with us. We need to find groups of people that are going to be there to support us till the end. They're coming to support you. They're coming to help you when you need that help. I think those are simple things that are part of the community. And then even like with food and diet, what kinds of things are you crowding out? What kinds of things are you saying I'm completely eliminating? Are those people doing the same kinds of things? Because if they're eating differently than you, it's going to be very hard for you to hold up what it is that your goals are. So if everybody in the community is really on the same page with the goal, it's easier to stay with the goal. But if we have different goals within that community, it's going to be really challenging. So, for me, I have hypertension. I would want to be a part of a community where those people are showing me, okay, how do I reduce my salt intake? How do I reduce my stress? And helping me with resources so that I can do that. Not trying to turn it up all the time. All right.
Yep.
So make sure that whatever community you're a part of, you're really thinking about your personal goals, the ethos, the identity of the community, and if it's in alignment. And if it's not in alignment, then that's probably not the community for you. All right.
That's right.
I hope that makes sense.
That was amazing. That was amazing. Yes. So you guys, I wish we could take questions and things like that. We gotta hop off, you guys. But this has been incredible. So you guys, with your last comments, show Chef Bee some love. And make sure that you follow her. She is at I am Chef Bee with 3 E's, right? She's gonna pop that down there again for me on YouTube, across social. You want to make sure that you follow her, okay? And so, Chef B, it
Yes.
has, listen, when we get together, it's always a time.
Yes.
So it has been an absolute pleasure having you on with us. Again, you guys, if you're interested in enrolling, there are 3 more of those partial scholarships left. And if you're interested in that, make sure you text and let us know that. All right. Listen, I'm going to let Chef B take us out. You guys have an amazing day.
Yes. And remember, look, Chef B stands for Be Empowered, Energized, and Engaged, y'all. The healing is in your hands. Don't outsource this healing to other people. Get out there, do the work for yourself. Come and work with me, cooking classes. We do all the things. Check me out on YouTube. We do a lot of education around eating plant-based. And of course, if you need support with your meal prep, we do ship nationwide. We have essential meals to go, and I'll send the link here for you as well. We do plant-based foods, plant-forward foods, internationally inspired foods, and we really help people to get on track who need to get on track. So we just popped the link in there so you can check it out. If you're in Atlanta, you can pick up. We ship nationwide, all the things. So you do have folks here trained by Dr. Kudger that can support you on your healing journey. And if you are interested in becoming a part of the Legacy family, we would be so happy to have you.
Awesome. Awesome. Bye, everybody.